What's up, everybody? Welcome to Livestream. Wait, we'll go back here. I got a little carried away dancing to the music. I don't know if you can tell I'm not a professional dancer. Just doing my little moves. And, I was doing this thing. I was kind of like pumping my fist. And I looked over, and it didn't look nearly as cool on camera as I felt when I was doing it. And so I stopped. If you're going to be a giant dork, the least you can do is be a self-aware giant dork. So, there you go. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. I'm going to answer your questions about FPV-related topics. I swallowed some of... I got this... I don't know where this came from. I found it in the gas station today. It's delicious. I love... Can I tell you? I love this trend of flavored, fruity, sparkling water sodas in this shape of bottle. There's various brands of them, but they've gotten super popular, and I love them. I love them. I don't know why I love them so much. They're delicious. And so yeah, tonight. You're gonna see me drinking a sparkling orange mango. Was it 7 Select? And this one is we're looking forward to this one. Come on, focus. Kiwi strawberry. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Always like to start the live stream with a little BS that isn't related to questions. I just spent the last 2 hours installing a stove up in my kitchen. Went to install the stove, pulled the old one out of the wall. It was hardwired. And I thought, that's dumb. I can install a receptacle. I'm handy. Run to the hardware store, buy a receptacle, buy a box. Spend roughly an hour uninstalling the old stove, installing the new receptacle, plug in the new power cord, wire up the new power cord to the new stove, go to push the new stove back into place. It's like 3 inches out from the wall. The thickness of the new plug is enough that it can't push all the way back. Curse a lot and then spend another hour uninstalling all that bullshit and going back and hardwiring it the way it was. And that just proves, folks, don't try to be smart. Don't try to be smart. Just do it the dumb way. Just keep doing it the dumb way. Okay. Oh, no, I tried to pay for professional installation. I just wanted it done. And the professional installation wasn't that expensive. And I was like, fine, just you do it. I won't deal with it. The guy pulled the stove out from the wall, took one look at it and said, I can't touch that. It's hardwired. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do it myself. And I did. But it took me 2 hours and there was a lot of frustration. So. Just recess the receptacle. Just recess the receptacle. Just recess the receptacle. I wonder why the receptacle was surface mounted in the first place. Almost as if there's a good reason why it was surface mounted in the first place. Because I live in a log cabin. That's a solid wood log. How am I going to recess the receptacle? That's the exterior wall. It's 10 inches thick. What, do you want me to route that out? It's not sheetrock. It's not drywall. There's no wall cavity. That's why it's surface mounted. Oh, why didn't I think of that? Smartass. There's a hollow section in the back of the stove the plug should fit in. Well, it would have fit in there if this box wasn't positioned for the previous stove. My point is, possibly, my point is, here I am. I'm glad to be here. Let's get to work. Oh, God. I want to kill all of you. Oh, there's a hollow section in the back of the stove the plug should fit in. Oh, it's almost as if I just spent 2 hours dealing with this problem. You think I noticed that? You think I freaking...
Hey, guy, just fix your drone. How's that?
That's what I'm going to say. Okay, I get it, Blunty. Yeah, exactly. The box is too far to the right. It won't fit. So, anyway. Let's answer questions about drones. Thank you, Blunty, for that's what Blunty's here for, is to keep me on track. I would rant about this for another 20 minutes. We got questions queued up. Let's take one here from, let's see. Here we go. Josh FPV. Picking Josh FPV's question first for 2 reasons. Number 1, Josh FPV is in the Discord. That means he's a patron. And also his name is Josh, which I'm partial to. I have enough spare parts to build a second Caddx GoFilm quad other than the motors. Caddx Bind and Fly comes with 1303 6000 kV. I have 4 extra 1404 4533 kVs. Are these too big for 2-inch props? So the motors are bigger, but that's not the reason they're inappropriate for 2-inch props. The reason they're inappropriate for 2-inch props is the kV. So the way that motor kV works, and pardon me if you already know this, some people will, but just in case, because there's always people out there who don't know something, battery voltage times kV equals motor RPM. In reality, the motor will attempt to make that RPM, but there will be drag and friction and other losses, and the actual RPM it makes will vary. But basically, battery voltage times kV equals the RPM the motor will try to make. The smaller the prop, the higher the RPM it needs to spin to make thrust. Big props spin slowly and make a lot of thrust because they're moving a lot of air. But if you try to spin a big prop quickly, 2 bad things will happen. Number 1, it will just take a lot more energy because that big surface area creates a lot of drag. And number 2, when the tip of the prop reaches about 80% the speed of sound, bad things start to happen. Number 1, the prop gets a lot less efficient, and then as it gets up from 80% the speed of sound to 95 to 99, somewhere between 80% and the speed of sound, really bad things start to happen. You get all these non-linear, laminar flow, I don't know. The sound barrier. You get a sonic boom at the tip of the prop, and then the prop explodes, more or less. So, if you think about it, at a given RPM, how fast is the tip of the prop moving through the air? Well, the larger the diameter of the prop, the faster the prop tip is moving, and that's another reason why larger props have to spin at a lower RPM. The ceiling of a prop's RPM is dependent on its size. So, your problem is that you have 6,000 kV motors. Now, the Caddx GoFilm runs on a 3S battery. Is it a 4S? Hang on, let's check. I just want to double check to be sure. Ooh, battery. Hello, 650 milliamp hour battery. Yeah, you recommend a 650 milliamp hour battery. What voltage? What voltage? 4S. Okay, so that's designed for a 4S. Let's do the math. I'm not going to put it on screen, but I'll just trust me. 4S times 4.2 volts per cell, 16.8 volts, 6,000 kV times 6,000 kV is 10,800 RPM. That's the nominal RPM that the motor wants to make on that prop. 10,800 RPM. You're going to take a 4533 motor. Well, you see what's going to happen? 4533 out of 6,000 is 75%. You're only going to make 76,000 RPM. And you're going to get less thrust. Now, that quad will probably fly with 25% less RPM, but it won't be ideal. Those bigger motors are designed for a bigger prop, and that's why they're a lower kV. Could you make a 1404 6,000 kV motor? Yes. But probably, this is the decision that the engineers have made, that motor would be too big. Okay, let's dig a little deeper because I think this is a fascinating topic. Just a little deeper because we're going to spend 20 minutes on one question. Or maybe we will. The bigger the motor, the more torque the motor makes. That's a good rule of thumb. The bigger the prop, the more torque you need to spin the prop. Could you make a big, gigantic 1507 motor at 6,000 kV that would spin a 2-inch prop? Yes, you could. But that motor, it would have way more torque than it really needs. And therefore, it would have a ton of extra weight. That prop wouldn't even make enough thrust to get that motor off the ground. The motor would have a lot of extra weight. It wouldn't be as responsive. So the idea with motor design is you get a motor that is big enough to provide you enough torque to spin the prop, and then you pick a KV that makes the prop spin fast enough to make thrust, and that's how you do it. That 1404 motor is designed for a larger prop. I don't know exactly what prop it might be. It might be a 2.5 inch or a 3-inch prop, right? So no, I wouldn't do what you're proposing. If you did do it, you would have heavier motors and you would make less thrust because you would be spinning at a lower RPM and the whole thing probably wouldn't fly ideally. Okay. Good question. Nick says, I have a TBS Unify Pro32 DP. It says it will run in ham mode at 3 watts, but requires a special wideband antenna or could it burn out the VTX? Is this true or are they just trying to get me for another $20? Okay, first of all, Nick, TBS does not bullshit like that. TBS is not just trying to get you for another $20. Anyway, you could buy the wideband antenna from anywhere. What's actually happening is you only need that wideband antenna if you are operating in the lower frequency bands. So the Unify Pro DP can go in the normal 5.8 to 5.9 gigahertz band, but it can also go down into low band in the 5.3 to 5.8 gigahertz roughly, maybe even a little lower than that. And the problem is if you have a narrow band 5.8 to 5.9 gigahertz antenna and you go down to 5.3 gigahertz, that signal is mismatched to the antenna. And then what happens when the antenna is mismatched is the VTX pumps power into the antenna and some of that energy radiates back into the VTX. It's called an impedance mismatch and it's called VSWR, variable standing wave ratio. VSWR is the amount of energy that's reflected back into the transmitter. Now, if the VTX is at a low power, the amount of energy that gets radiated back into the antenna doesn't do any harm. You get worse range because ideally you want all the energy to go out the antenna as signal. But everything works fine, nothing burns up. But if you're cranked at 3 watts and you have a 5.8 gigahertz antenna and you could go down to 5.3 gigahertz, then you can destroy the DP. So what you need to do is, number one, you probably shouldn't be using those lower frequencies anyway, because there is a limited set of circumstances in which they're legal to use. You should probably just stick to raceband. But if you decide that it's legal or appropriate for you to use the low band frequencies, then number one, just keep the output power down. I think the guideline is below 1 watt, but you should do whatever TBS says. And you'll be okay. You'll get worse range because your antenna is mistuned. But like, let's say you're somewhere and all the raceband channels are used up. And for whatever reason, you decide it is legal or appropriate for you to use a 5.3 gigahertz channel, which is not in use. Well, you go down to 5.3 gigahertz, you set your output power to a safe level, and you go up, and you don't have great range, but at least you're in the air. That's a situation where... But you could also just buy the wideband antenna. The thing to know, though, is the wideband antenna is going to have worse... Like, an antenna that is tuned just for 5.8 to 5.9 gigahertz is going to do better, usually, in 5.8 to 5.9 gigahertz than an antenna that's tuned for 5.3 to 5.9 gigahertz. Generally, the wider band an antenna is, the sort of worse, it's like jack of all trades, master of none, right? So. Aussie Doggy is curious, what is the Sigma RIZZLER battery? Here it is. Sigma RIZZLER. That's this battery right here. Hello. Focus. Why won't you focus? I know you can. Is it too close? Oh, okay. The Sigma RIZZLER. This battery, this is an Amprius SA08 cell. It is a silicone anode cell. Two things are interesting about silicone anode cells. One is that they have about 2 to 3 times the energy density of a typical LiPo, and about 40% more energy density than a lithium-ion pack. So for the same number of, for perspective, a 13 amp hour 6S pack made from Molicel P50Bs weighs 1.3 kilograms. A 1.3 kilogram pack made from Amprius SO8s has 21 amp hours. So you go from 13 amp hours to 21 amp hours in the same 1.3 kilogram package. Oh, that's pretty good. I like more amp hours. What's the downside? The downside is that that is a 13. The Molicel pack is about $400. The Amprius pack is about $1,300. So it's significantly more expensive. But hey, it's exciting because silicone anode batteries. These cells are made by a company called Amprius. As far as I know, they're the only ones I know who are mass producing silicone anode cells, although it could be other companies doing it that I just don't know about. It's exciting because the silicone, all these times we hear, oh, there's this great leap in lithium battery technology, and a lot of times it's like it's either not commercially feasible, or it's like something somebody did in a lab but it hasn't been reproduced, or maybe it's just complete BS. And the silicone anode is tech that you can buy today, if you have the money for it, to make a much, much more energy-dense battery. Why is it called the Sigma RIZZLER, though, I think is what you're asking. So I built this battery. I physically built this battery with my own 2 hands. I went out to visit, the company is called Upgrade Energy. Might as well put them on Upgrade Energy. Might as well put them on screen since I'm talking about them. And they actually had me out there. I was going to make, well, you might be thinking, why didn't you make any content about this? I'll tell you about that in a second. Upgrade Energy, they make batteries. They sell batteries on their website. And they taught me how they make their batteries. I made this battery under the tutelage of the owner of Upgrade Energy. And in order for me to be able to carry it home, take it on an airplane, it needs to have a manufacturer's label. They won't let you just take a random battery because they don't know how big it is. This battery is 10.8 amp hours. And just as a gag, he called it the Sigma RIZZLER. He was like, what should we call this battery? And we were all, oh, Sigma RIZZLER. It was during the skibbity toilet era. And we jokingly called it the Sigma RIZZLER. And he graciously labeled it as 99 watt hours, which is the maximum size you can bring on a plane. As far as I know, the manufacturer says it's 99 watt hours. That's good enough for me. You could take it in a carry-on. Well, it's not the label says it's 99 watt hours. That's all I know. That's all I know. The weight. What's the weight of this battery? Someone asks. Hold on, I'll tell you. I have to come all the way over here. So, this is, come on, Rug. 660 grams. 660 grams. It is 10.8 amp hours at 6S. so almost 11 amp hours for 660 grams. So you do the math. You go find a 660 gram battery, a 660 gram LiPo, and you compare the amp hours to that. They both have to be 6S. Bagzilla, what do you mean? Airlines are not letting batteries on planes anymore. Has the policy changed? I fly with batteries all the time. It's going to be a problem if I can't fly with batteries. I'm going to lose a lot of batteries. Yeah, but I mean, if they have a policy change, they would need to put that on their website, and I would want to see evidence of that. Royden Lepp says, my last upgrade energy order took 3 months to fulfill. Yes, unfortunately, upgrade energy is having a real problem right now with fulfillment. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I am aware that they are really slow to fill orders, and I don't know why. I would, at this point, I think it's hard for me to recommend actually buying from them, because of some of the things I've heard from commercial customers who are placing orders and then taking months for them to be filled. It's a shame. They make good batteries, and the owner, Matthew Barnard, is, first of all, he is just legitimately passionate and nerdy about batteries. He's incredibly intelligent, and he is very knowledgeable about how to build a good battery pack. The stuff he told me about how they do their development of their procedures and their QC is all amazing. Apparently he's very good engineer, but maybe not as good at business. Because I've heard stories of people saying, he makes a great product. Why is it taking forever to fulfill them? What's the deal? So, why didn't I make any content about this? Well, at the time that I was out there, they were in a temporary location. And we said, hey, when I move to my permanent office, maybe you'll come out and then you'll make content. In the permanent office, it'll be much nicer than this temporary location. And that sort of never panned out. I'm not sure why. How's the amp output on the Sigma RIZZLER? Well, so here's the thing. These Amprius cells, the C rating is heavily dependent on thermal performance. If they heat up, bad things happen. They cannot be allowed to heat up. Okay, so this is rated at 3C. Now, 3C doesn't sound like a lot, but this is a 10 amp hour pack. Okay, so the sticker says this is rated for 32 amps continuous. I've seen SA08 cells that are rated for 5C or 6C. They have a different sort of thermal design. The problem is that because these are just stuck together, the center cells have no way to dissipate heat, and they heat up. But even at only 3C, we get 30 amps. And if you get a 2P, if you get a 6S 2P, that would be 60 amps, and that's more than enough to fly many planes and some drones. But that is a downside of these Amprius cells. Anyway, let's move on. You've been flying for years. How many drones do you have on your property that you have given up on retrieving because they're unreachable? None. I have never lost a drone on my property that I didn't recover. I'm pretty sure. I might have lost a drone like on a Rotor Riot shoot in some remote location. I'm not even sure about that, though. I'm not going to say I've never lost a drone in the field, because then I will. And I'm sure that I must have. But I can't think of one right now. Is there an acceptable amount of puff when it comes to LiPos? Yeah, I mean, if you have a brand new LiPo and it's nice and solid and square and hard, the first time you fly it, it probably puffs just a little bit. I would go based off the internal resistance. I would measure the internal resistance when I first get the battery, and then I would, as you use it, check the internal resistance and see what's happening to it. You can usually tell from voltage sag, which is a function of internal resistance, as you fly, whether the battery is acceptable or not. I've seen some batteries that were pretty puffy, but the dude was still flying them, and they seemed to fly okay. I kind of didn't feel great about it. I can't really give you a guideline for how puffy a battery could be before I'm like, oof, that's not good. I guess if I had to give you a guideline, I'd say if it gets puffy to the point that the cells are starting to separate from each other at the ends, that's bad. Fars7 has a follow-up to the motor question. Would I choose the size of the motor to match the prop size? Yes. The motor size generally has to match the prop size, and the motor KV to match the quad's weight. No. No. In fact, if anything, you would choose the KV first based on the prop size. And then you would choose the motor size based on the quad weight. I think, if anything, you have it exactly backwards. Because if you have a prop of a given diameter, that prop needs to spin at a certain RPM to make a certain amount of thrust. So for any given prop diameter, there is a KV range that will work with that prop. Like for 6S, roughly 1700 kV to 2100 kV, right? With the floor being, it doesn't make enough thrust to really be fun or usable, and the ceiling being you're starting to approach the speed of sound with the tip of the props, or the motor's spinning so fast that the ESC can't keep up and you're getting desyncs and stuff. So you start with the prop diameter. From the prop diameter, you get a rough KV size range. And then you go to the motor size, and there is also a range of motor sizes that can work, but I think there's more variability there. If you have a very light quadcopter, you can go to a much smaller motor. For example, Umagod builds a sub 250 gram 5-inch and uses a 2004 motor at whatever, 1800 kV, whatever the appropriate kV is for a 6S battery. The kV is the same, but because the quad is so light, you can get away with a very small motor. The motor doesn't have to work as hard. On the other hand, if you had a 5-inch that was going to carry like a heavy camera, like not just a GoPro, but a little bit bigger, heavier camera, maybe a camera around 500 or 600 grams. At that point, a 2207 motor might not be enough. You might want to go up to like a 2407 motor. That little bit bigger motor will help you carry the weight. But the KV range is going to stay the same. Okay? That's what I would say. Let's do Super Chats. We're falling behind. It's been a half hour. I want to do Super Chats. Super Chats are when you click the $sign down at the bottom of the window and you pay me money to go first. Except I'm such a man of the people. I always start the stream by answering non-Super Chat questions and making the filthy rich people wait. Can I tell you something about filthy rich people? I went to Costco this morning. Speaking of going to the front of the line. In Knoxville, we have one Costco. And it is wildly oversubscribed. They are building another Costco. I think it's down in Lenoir City. No, not Lenoir City, Maryville. Down in Maryville. And I cannot wait for it to open because every time you go to Costco, the whole parking lot is full. You can't find a parking spot. It is a madhouse. We need another Costco here in Knoxville. Thank God they're building one. They just started a program where if you're a member of the Costco Executive Club, which is like $100 a year you pay, and you get a little bit of extra benefit, you get a check at the end of the year based on how much you spent at Costco. And here's the thing. If you don't get at least your membership amount back, they just refund you your membership. So like it's basically free to be an executive member. You just have to be willing to pay like $100 and then trust that you're going to go to Costco enough times to make it worth it. So anyway, everybody should be an executive member, but some people aren't. Maybe they haven't done the math, or maybe they just don't have $100 to spare. Bottom line is they started a new thing where Costco opens at 10, but executive members can get in at 9. And I had to go get some dog food and some laundry detergent and some patio furniture and a resort vacation to Aruba and a new hot tub. That's how a Costco trip goes. You go in for the dog food, and then by the time you leave, you've spent $10,000 and you're not sure what happened. But I got there at 9 a.m., and it was great. there was parking. There was a lady at the door, and she was saying, "Executive members, come in. If you're not an executive member, the line form's here." And I pulled out my Costco card, and I went in. I did my shopping. 20 minutes later, I was coming out. I looked at that line of people. There was already at 9:30 a line of people waiting to get in because they knew how busy it was going to be. They were trying to beat the rush. And I looked at them, and she was saying, "Executive members here, can come on in. Non-executive members, form in a line." I looked at them as I left, and I thought, I'm a bad person. I want to live in an egalitarian world. I don't want to live in a world where people can pay to go first. But I did enjoy getting a free parking spot, an easy parking spot. I did enjoy not having to fight the madhouse at the register. And I thought maybe egalitarian's not actually so good. But when I do my live streams, I answer the non-super chat questions first. But today, now it's time for the super chats. What do you wall mount your drones with? 3M command hooks. 3M command hooks. The medium size. That's the large. Let me get the medium, just so you see. Yeah, it's basically these. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then what I do is I take a rubber band and I hook the rubber band on the command hook and I wrap it around the arm of the drone. I knew I had one. So there's a little non-intuitive, but I hook it on the hook. It's above I hook it on I don't know how I can do this. Hook it on the hook. I wrap it around the drone's motor, and I hook it back on the hook. So I don't do this. This is not what you do. This is not what you do. This is sloppy. You wrap it around the motor like this, and it hooks on the hook. Like that. Oh, flippin' heck. I need a longer. It's like this. Right? Except it's all on there. It's like that. There we go. And then the drone just hangs that way. It's good. I made a video about it a long time ago. But that's basically it. FPV with Devo. Thank you for $5. 5-inch punch Flywoo F722 Pro Mini 45 amp stack using VCI Yuki's 2110 kV with an 04 light. Should use 4S or 6S. 2110 kV on a 5-inch. 2110 kV is near the top of what you should use with 6S with a 5-inch battery. There are racers who use 2150 kV motors. It can be done. It's not like insane, but it is as high as you really want to go. You're definitely pushing the edge of the envelope. VCI Yuki. What size motor?
They say also in another question they asked before they super chatted, and they said they are already trying a scale cap, and then they said they think it's still running too hot. Okay.
That's a 2207 motor, so if it was like a ridiculously small motor, that would explain why it's getting hot. So it's a racing motor. It's going to run hot. It's possible you have a PID tuning issue. Do you have you loaded like a PID preset, like the karate preset or something? Those can be too aggressive. It's possible that you don't have a clean enough build to get away with that PID preset. So what I would say is, make sure you're on default Betaflight PIDs and filters. If you want to, just change your PID profile in the Betaflight PID tuning tab. There's a pull down for PID profile. Just change that from PID profile 1 to PID profile 2, and everything will go back to defaults. And then if you don't like that, just change it back to profile 1, and you'll have your results back, your settings back. But if you loaded a PID tune preset, it could be too aggressive. That's the first thing I would have you do. If you're on default PIDs and filters and still have hot motors, they should be a little warm, but they shouldn't be like smoking hot. Unless you're just doing like lots of full throttle pulls, in which case, yeah, you 2110 kV. Now you say already has a throttle cap. Is that right?
They said a scale cap. So maybe part of the problem is you should be running, like you should try a motor output limit versus a scale.
Don't do a throttle scale, do a motor output limit. But you should be able to run 2010 kV on 6S on a good racing build. Like that shouldn't be not like impossible. Like, are you sure that they're actually as hot as you think they are? Maybe they're going to be warm. You have an incredibly high kV motor on 6S. It's made to go super fast. So I would say consider a motor output limit. Here's the thing, and I don't know you, so I don't want to presume. Most racers don't need a 2100 kV motor to race on a 5-inch track. Most racers, if you actually look at their throttle, they're not at full throttle very often. And when you give them a higher kV motor, instead of going to 65% throttle, they're only going to 55%. You don't have the skill. I don't mean you personally, because like I said, I don't know you. But in general, a typical racer doesn't have the skill to need or want a 2110 kV. Now, obviously, fly what you want. If you like 2110 kV, go for it. But if you're thinking, well, if I put a motor output limit on there, I won't be as fast. In my experience, and I'm a terrible racer, so my experience, what does it mean? But when I did Race Gal a little while back, I put throttle caps on my tiny whoops, and it made me faster. Because I had more throttle resolution. I could move the throttle more, and I had more precise control of the throttle. I wasn't using the top of the throttle anyway. So higher kV wasn't really doing me any favors. My battery on 6S gets super hot. It's freestyle flying. Okay, well, if the issue is your battery, you need a better battery. What battery are you running? Okay, so if you're doing freestyle, that makes more sense to have those 2110 kV motors than racing for most people. Obviously, for Yuki, 2110 kV is where he wants to be, but he's an exception. But for freestyle, a lot of times you want a really strong punch, like to the moon. I would guess that your battery C rating is too low, or maybe you have an old battery or a damaged battery.
It gets too hot to hold.
Okay, well, first of all, if your battery is getting too hot to hold, you're destroying it. And I'm surprised it hasn't just lit on fire yet. Stop doing that. There is a point where the battery will go into thermal runaway and will just light on fire. So I would get rid of that battery. That battery is too low of it. Like, what battery is it? Want to know. Tell us what battery it is. Please. That battery is too low of a C rating and or has previously been damaged, which caused its internal resistance to go up. If it was okay when you first bought it, it's not okay now. If multiple times you have flown it and it's gotten too hot to hold, I would get rid of that battery. It's like, that battery's not safe. And you've already damaged it fatally. So, it sounds like you need a better battery. SMC is one. I hear from Chris Rosser that the Tattoo V6 is as good as the SMC or better. So those are the two best batteries you can buy these days. The SMC Racing and the Tattoo V6. Ovonic 6S XT30 connector. Oh my God. Okay, again, you didn't give us any specs on the battery, but you did tell me it has an XT30, and that tells me it's not appropriate for a 5-inch. How many milliamp hours? How many milliamp hours? You left out. How many milliamp hours and what C rating? So yeah, you used too small of a battery with too low of a C rating, and you destroyed the battery. That's the bottom line. That's your problem. All right, well, we solved that one. Loey79, thank you for $8 I got an update about the rough motors from last week. Turned out it was a bad solder joint. It's so bad. I can't resist every time. I apologize to Australians everywhere. Of course, if I hadn't told you I was attempting to do an Australian accent, you wouldn't have known. I'll start again. Lowy79 has an update for the rough motors from last week. There was a bad solder joint on the cap. Okay, well, I'm glad you solved it. 850 milliamp hour, 150C. Okay, so two things about that FPV with Devo. That 150C rating is absolute bullshit. You don't believe it. But you can't run a 5-inch at 20. You can't, like, if you had an ultra light, like a 250 or 300 gram 5-inch, which, like, you're not going to just stumble across that. If you had an ultra light 5-inch, you could run it off an 856S. But a 5-inch, like you're saying, no. Especially not on these motors. That is just the wrong battery. You need a very good battery. You have ultra high powered motors and you're running them on a little teeny battery. No wonder. I'm amazed the battery didn't light on fire. Good job.
So just to be clear, you should have like a 1100 to 1300 milliamp hour 6S with an XT60.
Maybe as much as a 15 or 1600 milliamp hour, perhaps. Like the SMC 1600 milliamp hour is surprisingly light. So it depends. The battery should weigh between 180 and 220 grams, roughly. Maybe a little more than 220, but that's a good weight. As Blunty said, 1100 to 1300 milliamp hour 6S, roughly. And you want a C rating of 90 to 120. Anything higher is probably bullshit. But that's what you want to be. Yeah. Okay. Will you answer my question? I'm leaving in 30 minutes. It's in the Discord under this name. Okay, Gunnar, I hope we got to you in time. Gunnar Schweiterman. What's the question? EJ, ELJ. Okay, I got it. From ELJ. If winter help, my drone when armed has the motors beep like the beeper is activated. Please view video. Okay. Need audio. Why do I not have audio? Why don't I have audio? It's hard to hear the beeping if I don't have audio. Is there no audio? Is there audio on this, Blunty, and I'm just not hearing it, or is there no audio?
There is audio on it. You might have the tab muted.
Oh, yeah, that's what I have. You're absolutely right. Yep, because it's freaking beeping all the time. Yeah, okay. Okay, you're armed. Are you armed? Am I crazy, or are you armed right now? That's why it's beeping. It's beeping because you're armed. It's notifying you that you're armed. I don't know how you're armed when you're plugged into USB, but you are. Oh, it stopped. What did he do? Wait, did you activate? Now you're not armed, but you activated the beeper mode. Okay, here's what I notice. Boom, right here. Somehow you're armed. I mean, maybe I'm misinterpreting what I'm seeing. And I believe what's happened is you're armed, but you haven't raised the throttle, and it's beeping to tell you, to warn you that you're armed. That's my read. So... Okay, so on Betaflight, if you have set the quad up so that when you arm, the props don't spin, then Betaflight beeps as soon as you arm. Although it probably wouldn't be the motor beeper, would it? Because then it couldn't spin the motors. I would really... I don't know what we're seeing here. And the motors don't spin. I don't know what you're showing me. I have no idea what you're showing me here. It would help if there was some explanation for what I'm seeing. It's always hard when people send you a video of troubleshooting and they're like going through a bunch of steps without talking. And I understand why people may not want to talk on video. Maybe they're self-conscious about their voice, or maybe English isn't their first language. But if we're just going through a bunch of steps with no explanation, it's hard to interpret what's actually happening.
I'd recommend posting this in the troubleshooting chat in the Discord, since you're already there.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah. Here's what I would do if I were you. I'll definitely do that. I want to see the video. I want to see the on-screen display. Usually in the on-screen display, there is some status message that gives you more insight into why the drone is beeping. That's one of the best ways in INAV to troubleshoot.
I would also just say, the configurator lately in Betaflight has been unreliable as to what is lighting up versus what is working.
Interesting.
Use things in the modes tab. I don't trust it. I think there's some state issue, and I expect it's similar in INAV. So, you're not intended to be able to arm when you're connected unless you've enabled the switch on the motors tab that allows you to arm.
Yeah.
While you're in connected to USB. So, just make sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, he says I'm armed and I have no throttle output. Yeah, I mean, when you arm, the motors should start spinning immediately. So, one thing I would want to test would be, do the motors spin from the motors test tab? Do the motors spin at all? The fact that the motors are beeping, that sounded like a motor beeper to me. The fact that the motors are beeping makes me think that the motor, you're using D-Shot and the motors are working fine. But then, you think you're armed, but are you armed? A lot of times, there's some INAV condition, you don't have GPS lock that prevents you from flying. So, also, you normally can't arm when you're plugged into USB, as Blunty pointed out. So, the number one way to help this would be to look in the on-screen display and look at the status message. I almost wish that there was a way you could see the current status message in the configurator. Because a lot of times, you can get that information in the configurator, but it's not always easy to, tell what's going on.
I don't know also if INAV's like Betaflight, but my typical recommendation is just to make sure we're not confused about how and when we can arm.
Yeah.
Right? Unplug from everything, plug a battery in, attempt to arm, leave it like it is, right? Make sure your props are off, and then plug it into USB. When you plug it into USB, you should see a set of arming flags that is MSP plus anything preventing arming. If you don't see any flags there, then something else is going on, right? You're not blocked from arming. You're able to arm, and then you can sort of move forward from there. Because, there's various issues with trying to see what the actual status is.
Yeah. A lot of times the status, in the configurator, it will say that GPS is not ready. But then in the OSD, it will say, waiting for SATs. It'll give you a more specific message. Dougie Doug says you can definitely arm an INAV when it's plugged into USB. I mean, if you go into the Outputs tab and, enable that, you can. But not by default. It won't, right? Am I crazy? They lock that out, I think. Okay. So what I would ask you, the next thing I would ask you, and then we're going to move on, is record DVR, power up, hit arm, beep, 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 happens. What do you see in the OSD when that happens? That's what I want to know. Duck on Quack, thank you for a $5 super chat. Fatshark Dominator HD not reading the Sneaky FPV OSD file. Duck on Quack, I have a tutorial about doing the sneaky fonts on the Dominator HD. It's been a long time since I did it, but if it's not as simple as just putting the file on the SD card. You have to go into the menu and load the file, and then you have to change the display setting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer you
Digital
to this
FPV
video.
systems like DJI, Woth,
Shut up, Bardwell. Revamp your OSD instantly with beautiful HD fonts. And in here, download font files, custom OSD font for Walksnail. I show how to do it. And I'm referring you to the video because it's been a long time and I don't remember the steps.
Now let's install custom fonts on the Walksnail system.
Oh, look,
and just
it's
like we
your
did with
exact
DJI,
goggles.
they're in a different, that's as well. I don't know. We'll try to
So here's what I suggest. go through that video. In fact, just go through that one section of the video. See if there's something there that you've missed and that fixes it. And then if not, email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com, and I will try to figure out what's gone wrong. Okay.
Keep that in 3. There's actually 3 choices here.
We download the font.
I think I used Contract, a file which has some instructions for how to install the fonts, and it couldn't be simpler. Here is the SD card that I took out of the goggles. It's been formatted inside the goggles and is ready to go. And here is the zip file I just downloaded. And we're just going to take these files and we're going to drag them over to the SD card. Make sure that you do this functionality to work. We're going to go to Display. And then we're going to go to Font Update. And this will cause the goggles to read the custom font that we've just installed off the SD card.
It says weather update fonts. It says OK. And then
you can see that after I do that, the custom OSD changes to custom and the custom font changes to BFWS. Don't worry about that right now. If I back out of the menu, though, you will see that sure enough, we now have.
So that's not working for you. If that's not working for you, my guess is that the way that you put the file on the SD card is not right, and it's not reading the file. And I would have to look at your SD card, which I'm not going to do that. I'll try to do that on a live stream. You can email jb@joshuabardwell.com. It's all grayed out, including the update font. Yeah, I think we have to check what's on your SD card. Okay, he says I've watched that. It doesn't give me the option to update. All right, what I would want to see what's on your SD card. And I'm going to, maybe you put the zip file on there instead of, I'm not sure exactly. I would also want to check on my goggles. Well, I don't have the Dominator HD anymore, sadly. But I have the Goggles X. Maybe the process is the same. Whether you can hit update when there's no SD card at all. If there's something about your goggles where it's grayed that option out. All right. T-Gold says, I cannot get OSD to show up on my HDZero Freestyle VTX. I've tried everything. Thank you for $10, T-Gold. T-Gold, the process for doing that, the first thing you need to do is update the firmware on your VTX, because with some older firmwares, the OSD doesn't work right. It's probably not the issue, but it would be worth doing. And then, how old is this video? Here we go. Here we go. This is the video I want.
This video is.
Oh my God, the audio was effed up there. This video, build an FPV drone in 2023 HDZero video transmitter. And what you're going to do is go to unlock the VTX and update the firmware. You should do that. And then set up the HDZero OSD in Betaflight.
The next thing we need to display on-screen display. Important suddenly displays each of other uses. Before I sat down to record this part of the video, I went back.
And what you're going to do is go into, oh my God, where am I? You're going to find out what UART number your HDZero video transmitter is on. So that's what I'm describing here. And then, do I load the preset? Yeah. You're going to load the HDZero VTX preset, as I show you there. And then once you do that, it should work. That's it. That should be all you need.
Just to be clear, in chat he said, I tried assigning MSP, tried the HDZero preset, switched UARTs, updated Betaflight, enabled HDOSD, reflash firmware. I don't know what to do.
So then it might be a wiring problem.
I was going to say, one thing I didn't see there was wiring. So that's where I would start.
So
but
you've done
switch UARTs. Maybe you mean switch physical UARTs. Make sure you're doing RX to TX.
Yep, yeah. RX and TX could be wrong. What you might do is you might send a photo of your wiring to jb@joshuabardwell.com. Or, see, a lot of times, and I don't like to just jump to, hey, maybe you'd like to just pay for an hour of somebody's time. Because, but a lot of times when somebody has been trying this, trying that, they're super frustrated. They feel like they've tried everything. They would rather just, to then just go, oh my God, I got to close that. I gotta mute that tab. Hold on. A lot of times they don't want to now just go back and forth again with somebody like me or Blunty, through 10 more things. They just want their issue solved. If you're frustrated and you just rather pay $50 to have somebody solve the issue, Blunty has a one-on-one support service where he will get on a video call with you over Discord and he will just fix it for you. I mean, it'll be your hands, but his brain. And let's face it, it's the brain that is the issue here. No offense. So if you want to, you can message at It's Blunty. Hold on, Blunty. ITSBLUNTY, and he'll get you set up. Go ahead.
I just want to say that I think I have a theory, and my theory is that a lot of people who are having issues like this, who've gone through all the steps multiple times, they get very frustrated. Yeah. I understand why, right?
Of course.
And then what happens is that they assume that everything has been checked and done at some point, right? You've done it a few times, right? We've run through this. I've talked to multiple people. I've gone through conversations with people. I've looked at Reddit. I've looked at forums or whatever. So there's sort of this thing inside of their head is this can't be solvable. I need somebody to help me.
Yeah.
My experience has been as soon as I get in chat with them and we talk about setting up a time and I offer to help them over text instead, just to make sure we can't figure it out.
Yeah.
90% of those people get solved within less than an hour over text back and forth randomly.
You always try not to take people's money, which I really think is.
I try really hard not to take people's money. I'm like, please, let's work it over text because I bet we can fix it in no time, right? Mm-hmm. But what I think is happening is there's some mental block. I don't think it's their fault at all. I've had this happen many times for myself, where you're just so frustrated that you feel like there's no resolution. As soon as I tell you, I can get on a call, we'll solve it, no problem. It's like that resolution. They feel comfortable now, right? Okay. Yeah. Well, now we can work on back and forth because I have a solution later. I could always get on a call, right? So let's go back and forth. We'll try to figure it out, right? And there's more motivation or there's more relaxation or whatever, and we sort of just figure it out. So just so you know, that's very commonly a thing. One-on-one with people who are experienced and understand can be really helpful. That's why emailing JB also can be really helpful, right? Because we've seen a lot of things over a lot of time, and we know all the steps to take. So anyway, that's a little rambly, but I just kind of wanted to present that idea and say that it's always good to take a step back. It's always good to take a day off. And then feel free to message me on Discord. It's Blunty, and we could talk it over text first. Yep. And then if we can't figure it out, we'll set you up on a call.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. He says, I'm willing to pay for an hour of time. Look, there's people in the world for whom $50 is a lot of money, and that would be just an unreasonable ask. And there's people in the world for whom $50 is okay, I might have spent that on dinner. I'll pay it to Blunty instead. And if $50 is a reasonable amount of money for you to spend on an hour at a time and you just want the damn problem solved, Blunty will get on a phone with you. But he'll try not to first.
It is often the case that somebody will, after we solve it over text, somebody will ask me for a way to donate to me and then give me some money anyway. Yeah,
because they're so freaking happy.
That's much easier, right? Yeah. Everything's been solved. If you want to hand over something, you can. That means you're well enough off to do it. Mm-hmm. It sucks to gatekeep getting your drone flying that you already spent a bunch of money on. I know it's not gatekeeping the one-on-one help you, but I love to help people get their freaking drone in the air. That's why I'm here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I'm the same way. I've always helped people for free and hoped that on the back end it would work out, that they'd, enough of them would decide to contribute that I would be able to. And so far it's worked out. But my thought was, I remember the very first question that I asked on RC groups. Perhaps it wasn't the very first, but it's what I remember as the very first. And kids these days don't know this problem. But you old farts, listen up. I plugged in my battery. I built my very first drone. I plugged in my battery. And as soon as I plugged in, the motors went tick, 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 tick. They were just kind of spinning a tiny bit when I hadn't armed yet. And the issue, you may know, is that you have to calibrate the ESCs. And I didn't understand. I didn't understand about analog. When you use D-Shot, you don't have to calibrate the ESCs. That's why kids these days probably don't know this problem. But when you're using PWM signal or any analog signal, you have to calibrate the ESC. So the ESC didn't think the throttle was all the way down, and you need to calibrate it. And so I posted on RC groups. I was like, hey, why are my motors... Actually, I didn't even post. Now, I'm remembering more now that I tell the story. I found someone else asking the same question. I was like, oh, damn. And I think of that moment a lot. There were so many times when people helped me for free without asking for anything in return, whether that was a direct answer to a question or whether that was a forum post that someone made and that I stumbled across. And I always think of that. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. Even today, people help me for free. Now, it's a little different. Like when I reach out on the Telegram channel for the OpenIPC project and the devs there or the people there help me solve problems, they're not doing it because I'm a YouTuber, but kind of they are. Like they would do it for anybody. But when I pop up, suddenly it's, oh, Bardwell's here. He's going to make a video. And they're extra motivated to make sure I have a good experience because they want me to represent they want their product to do well in my video. And that's just part of the sort of invisible backpack that I carry around that I try to be aware of. But people still help me for free. I reached out to Madstech when I was having trouble flashing my OpenIPC. All these stories seem to revolve around OpenIPC, strangely. Flashing my OpenIPC receiver, and he helped me out. So, like, my policy is help everyone for free. And then if someone wants something exceptional, that's when you charge money. So, like, for me, the line is that I have to put everything down. I have to sit down in front of a camera or a phone and talk just to you. That's the line. If I'm emailing you, I could still be doing anything else I want to do. If I get busy, I can just put you off for an hour and come back to it. But if I have to, that's the line where I'm like, no, I'm charging money. The other line for me is if you're doing it as a business and you're going to make money, if you're like, hey, I have a production company and I need to get my drone working so I can get in the air. Well, you're going to make money with this, so I should make a little money too. Like we're both professionals here. But for hobbyists, I never charge except to get on the phone. So, I don't try as hard as Blunty to talk you out of it. Like I make one pass. I'm like, hey, I'm happy to help you for free over email as long as you want. But if you're kind of sick of it, I'll just jump on the phone with you. Your call. Blunty, I think you more actively try to avoid getting on the phone with them. I don't know.
I just like to make it very clear that, like, yeah, it's more likely than you think it is that we can fix this over text chat.
Yep.
Like, that's the main thing. I think people are, like, at their wit's end, and I'm like, no, I bet there's still, like, an 80% chance we could figure this out.
Yeah. Okay. So T-Gold. Contact It's Blunty or email me, either one, and I'm sure we can get you sorted out. Alex Brain says, thank you for £5. Alex Brain, would the AGO1 Nano gimbals be worth the upgrade on a Radiomaster Pocket? I like the AGO1 gimbals. I make the analogy that AGO1 gimbals are like leather seats in a car. They don't make you drive faster. They don't make the car more reliable. All they do is when you get in the you sit on the leather seat and you're like, oh yeah, leather. And you kind of feel like a stud because you got leather seats. You enjoy the car maybe more, right? AGO1 gimbals don't make you a better pilot, but they do feel just a little nicer in the hand. The radio is a little heavier. It feels more solid. It just feels like a more premium product. So they are a cosmetic and a sensual upgrade, but they're not a performance upgrade, I would say. Whether they're worth it to you depends on how much money you have. I love them. I like to have them, and I can afford to have them. So I would have AGO1 gimbals on every one of my Radiomaster radios. That's because I'm a snob. Total Warrior, thank you for 400 rupees. I'm thinking of converting my oldest quad, a Manta 5 DC analog with Zinc E Pro motors, into an X8 using the adapters from Let's Fly RC. Doing it just for the sake of it. Anything to look out for. Will the Manta 5 DC fit 2 ESCs and flight controller in the tower? I wouldn't assume the Manta 5 could add another ESC in the stack. I would guess that it won't because 5 inches these days are pretty tight. But you have the drone. You're looking at the stack. You can answer that question better than I can. I'm going to guess the answer is no. What you could do is buy longer standoffs and raise the top plate. That depends on how the front end is designed, though. Okay, so unfortunately, yeah, no freaking way. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but like that looks pretty freaking tight, doesn't it? I think you're going to really struggle to get 2 ESCs and a flight controller on that stack. So what can you do? If you had a different front end, you could buy longer standoffs and raise the top plate. That's an option. You could just trash that front end and just go standoff, 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 standoff with longer standoffs. That's an option. You just need a 3D print to hold the camera. If you don't want to trash the front end, it's possible you could go ESC on the stack and then flight controller in the back, but then it depends on what video transmitter you have and how you're mounting that. There was another question. It wasn't a super chat, but this reminds me of it, and I want to get it. Nico FPV, from way back at the beginning of the stream, hopefully Nico is still here. Nico FPV says, I'm building an X8 Cinelifter. I wanted to be able to hold the 04 Pro, but I can't find any good frames that aren't crazy expensive. So, Nico, unfortunately, I don't have an option for an X8 Cinelifter for you. You might be able to come up with some kind of a 3D printed adapter to adapt a quad frame to an X8. That might be a way to go. But the question that I would ask you is, why are you building an X8? And here's the thing that people don't understand about X8s, and maybe you do understand it, but a lot of people don't. Let's say you've got a quad 8-inch, and you want to carry more weight. Okay? One option is to go from a quad to an X8. An X8 being an octocopter, 8 motors in a quad configuration, one on top of the other. That's going to not quite double your thrust. You have double the motors, but you don't have double the thrust because the motors are coaxial, which means the motor on bottom it's not quite as efficient as the motor on top because it's eating the dirty air from the top motor, and you get maybe 75% additional thrust, maybe 80, 85% depending, but you don't get double the thrust. You do get extra thrust though. The other thing you could do is you could go from an 8-inch to a 10-inch quad, or an 11-inch quad, or a 13-inch quad. You can increase the prop size. And the thing I want to tell you is that if you care about flight time, in addition to sort of payload capacity, then you do not want to go to a coaxial octo. A coaxial octo will always have shorter flight time than a quad of the same prop size. That's the revelation. And the first time I figured this out, it surprised me. And I've since run into people who think I have a quad 8-inch and I get 20 minutes of flight time. Maybe I had 10 minutes. I don't know. It depends. 10 minutes of flight time. I want more flight time. So I'm going to go to an octo. No, you will get less flight time. The reason for that is that you have added weight. You've added more motors. That's additional weight. You've added another ESC. That's not very much weight. And more importantly, you need a bigger battery. You have twice as many motors. So you're pulling not quite twice as many amps. Maybe more than, I don't know. You're pulling about twice as many amps. Since you're pulling twice as many amps, you run the battery down twice as fast. Oh, but Bardwell, you're wrong. Because yes, I have more weight, but those motors have to run half as fast. So they're pulling half the current. So it all cancels out. But no, it doesn't. That's my point. It doesn't quite cancel out. There are inefficiencies, and long story short, when you double the motors, you shorten the flight time. So what do you get when you go to a coaxial configuration? You get more thrust. If I have a quadcopter 8-inch, and I need to carry a camera that weighs 2 kilograms, I don't know. Or if I have a battery and I want increased flight time, so I'm going to go to a bigger battery, and my battery weighs 2 kilograms. Maybe it weighs 3 kilograms. I don't know, whatever weight makes sense. If I want longer flight time, if there's too much weight, and the quad basically it's hovering at 75% throttle, I don't have enough thrust. I can get that thrust by going to a coaxial octo. But I will get shorter flight times. But I'll be able to fly. If you want more thrust and longer flight times, you go to a bigger prop. It is almost always better to go to a bigger prop when you want to carry weight instead of going to a coaxial configuration. Because the only reason you would use a coaxial configuration is if you are constrained on your footprint. If you absolutely cannot go from a 5-inch prop to an 8-inch prop, or from an 8-inch prop to a 13-inch prop, for some reason that is absolutely out of the question, then you go to a coaxial and you'll get shorter flight time, but at least you'll be able to carry the weight. Okay. But get rid of the idea in your head that you can get longer flight time by going from a quad configuration to a coaxial octo. You can't. And so when you say I'm building an X8 cinelifter, my question is why? You got an 8-inch cinelifter or whatever, 13-inch cinelifter. Why aren't you just going from a 7-inch prop to a 10-inch prop, or from a 10-inch prop to a 13-inch prop? Is there a reason? Because you would get longer flight time and better performance by going to a bigger prop. Okay. Is that the same for a normal octocopter, not coaxial? Yes, but not as much. So if I go from a quad to a normal octo, now I am getting twice as much thrust. Because the motors are no longer coaxial, so there's no longer the efficiency loss. But I have still added weight, I have still added amp draw, and so it's not quite as much loss. It's closer to breaking even, but you still don't break even. You would still be better to build a quad with bigger props. Size for maneuverability. Yes, absolutely. If you build a big 13-inch quadcopter, it's going to be kind of lumbering in the air. If you build an 8-inch or a 10-inch coaxial octo that makes the same amount of thrust, it's going to be much more nimble. Absolutely. That's a use case. Redundancy? Well, S. Jackson, I hope you're not flying Betaflight, because Betaflight doesn't have redundancy. It does not. In order to have redundancy, like you have the coaxial motors, so if one motor fails, the other one can keep flying, right? Except Betaflight's mixer doesn't take that into account. In order for that to work, the mixer has to be able to recognize that the motor has failed and reconfigure itself to take that motor out of the configuration. With Betaflight, if you have a redundant configuration, like you have an octo or a coaxial octo, the minute one motor fails, the quad falls out of the air. Because Betaflight tries to spin that motor to max, and that motor makes no thrust, and Betaflight puts all the other motors to min, and then that's it. Only RG-Pilot can do redundant motors as of today. Well, probably DJI, but of the open source firmwares, only RG-Pilot does that. Skydozer, you're a mod. Just put him in timeout, dude. Just put him in timeout. The 4th time he says he spams the chat, just put him in timeout. Done. All right. Okay, back to the super chats. That's a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while. Thank you for the opportunity. What would be a great next drone option under Japan's 100-gram limit? Do you recommend upgrading the antennas on the SkyZone X4 Pro goggles? I do recommend upgrading the antennas on the SkyZone Goggles X. Aftermarket antennas will improve your range over the stock antennas. It's money well spent. Under 100 grams, dude, I don't know. I am not I'm super aware of the 250-gram limit. I'm not super aware of the 100-gram limit. So, like, what size drone comes in right at 100 grams? Is it a 75? Is it an 85? I like the Flywoo drones a lot. The Flywoo has a 1.6 inch, a 2 inch. They have an 85 millimeter. They don't go up to 95, I don't think. So I think I would consider like looking at the Flywoo line. They have some really good small quadcopters. But I don't know exactly what comes in at 100 grams. Fair enough, Skydozer. Fair enough. That's fair. Yeah. Ciati says 85s are usually well under 100 grams, but like a 95 is oftentimes over 100 grams, so it's hard to say.
Really wish YouTube had like review. I can't remember what it's called, but basically on Twitch you can review people who've been banned, and they can put in requests to be unbanned. Then they give you like some statement, and you can see what they said in chat.
Mm.
And people
Nice.
do streams where they go through all the unbanned requests and decide if people should be unbanned or not.
Once I ban somebody, I usually just like I seldom ban people, but by the time I ban them, there's usually no coming back.
I'm the
Like,
opposite. I'm like super trigger happy, like, and then if I decide later, I'm like, okay, maybe you could come back.
I'll time people out. I'll time people out at the drop of a hat. But an actual ban, because I know that I'm never going to go back and review the ban, like, I am a little trigger happy. Like, there are certain things someone can say in the, like, I've gotten super, like, I just have no tolerance whatsoever. If someone shows up in the comments and they're like, huh, this guy sure talks a lot, doesn't he? Why don't you get to the point, mister? And it's obvious, number one, that they've never seen my channel before. So it's not like they're like a longtime listener who is giving me nuanced feedback. And then, like, and I'm just like, okay, ban. I just hide them from the channel. Like, they can still view the videos, but I will never see their comments again, and neither will anyone else on my channel. I'm just like, okay, you're clearly in the wrong place. Like, if you watch one of my videos and your first reaction is, boy, why doesn't this guy get to the point? You should, and then you leave that like, I know I can ramble, but then you feel like you should leave that comment when you just got here. Nah, I don't need to hear from you. I'm done. Chris Coatman, I have the goggles V2 that recently suffered a minor drop. Now they do not recognize the SD card. More details in the chat. Damn, dude. I mean, you dropped them and now they don't recognize the SD card. The answer is that you got to send them back to DJI for service. Except nowadays, shipping things to some customs isn't letting things come back into the country from DJI, assuming you're in the USA, which could be an issue. But I don't know what to tell you. You dropped them. They don't recognize the SD card. It's not like a firmware update's going to fix it. You got to send them to DJI for service. Thank you for an $8. They won't take. Yeah, I don't even know if you can send them to DJI for service though. Like because of the issues with importing DJI and customs and stuff, it's a real kick in the nuts. Like I never would have guessed when DJI first. People said DJI is going to ruin FPV. They're going to ruin the FPV market. And they release the DJI FPV system. Some people get into it. I never would have guessed that what would screw the people over who went with DJI would be that U.S. regulations, executive policy, customs, whatever, would make it impossible to import them, which seems to be the state as of today. That those people would be screwed over by our government instead of being screwed over by DJI. Usually DJI customers get screwed over by DJI. Didn't see that coming. Squid 510, thank you for a $5 super chat. Do you recommend a USB PD LiPo charger? Not really. Not really. I mean, I guess if you have a big USB power bank, you could. You're talking about the Hoda T6 PD. Let's look at it. Hoda T6 PD. It runs off a USB power delivery, I guess. Like, what is it? What it has? In 10 to 39 volts. Like, it supports power PD input. Yeah, okay. 300 watts? That doesn't make sense. With DC input. Oh, with DC input, 300 watts. The problem is this. With a USB PD supply, what's the max input it can do? Is it 45 watts? Is it 60 watts? Is it 100 watts? It's compatible with PD 3.0 and QC fast charging protocols. There we go. 20 volts, 5 amps. So that's 100 watts. That's actually pretty good. So as long as you're okay charging at under 100 watts, and as long as you have a PD power supply that can output 100 watts, like I have this Anker, it might not be this exact one, but I have this Anker Prime charger. This little dude outputs 100 watts, and it's $70, but like this combined with this would be kind of a killer travel kit. Oh my God. I'm going to buy this. Am I going to buy this? Oh my God. I'm actually talking myself into buying this right now. Here's the thing. 100 watts, like that's, hang on. 100 watts divided by 26 volts. That's a 6S battery. That's 3.8 amps. That's like, I usually charge my batteries at about 4C. Don't tell the safety police that I do that. I'm not going to justify that decision to you, and I'm going to tell you you shouldn't do it. But like when I look at a charger, I want to be able to charge at about 4C if I decide that's what I want to do. Here's the short version. The short version is I think it's safer to charge at 4C and know that I'll be there for 15 minutes until the battery reaches full charge, instead of charging at 1C and worrying that I'm going to get bored and walk away while the battery takes an hour to charge. There's more to it than that, but that's the short version. Am I increasing the odds that my battery lights on fire? Yes, I am. These are risks that I try to safe, sane, and consensual. No, wait. Risk aware. Oh, anyway. I try to take care of it. But I travel with an Anker charger like this. Right? I already have a 100 watt power supply with me. It's not very big. Which means that if I had this charger, that's a lot smaller than the Hoda D6 Pro that I travel with. The flip side, though, is I can only do one at a time. With my Hoda, I could do 2 channels. Oh, I'm not sure that actually works out, because now I need 2 of these power bricks. This is actually kind of good. Like, excuse me, I don't know if this is a good charger, but like if you already have a USB PD power supply, this is a great way of piggybacking on that. That's pretty exciting. If you're using a solar generator as a power supply, you probably have more than one 100 watt output. I don't know. If it's only a 60 watt output or only a 45 watt output, that's going to be a little bit more of a problem because your batteries will take longer to charge, but it depends on how long it takes for them to charge or how big of a battery they are. Now, Joseph Dahari has, I used to have this one. This is the old 100 watt one. But I bought the gallium nitride one because it was so much smaller, and I was like, gallium nitride. Okay. But yeah, that's a good one too. Flatrat3 says, thank you for $5, Flatrat. I'm working on the iGo challenge, mostly fly outside. I had trouble with small movements on TripGate. Suggestions on what to help? Rates, Expo, maybe tune beta 75p. If you're having trouble with small, precise movements, Expo could help. You may need slower rates. I don't know what your rates are. If your rates are above 900, you probably should reduce your rates unless you're an exceptional pilot. I would say for freestyle, you could be as low as 600 and still do decent freestyle. You just won't get as many, you won't get snap rolls. And I would say most people don't need to be much higher than 900 unless you really want very fast snap rolls. But you want a lot of expo at that point. Drift Shot says, Bardwell, can I ask you a question? Yup. That was it. You should have asked the question. No. So right now I'm answering Super Chats. We still have about 10 Super Chats to go. Once we get through the Super Chats, we'll go back to the regular chats. I've seen a picture of you as Drone Jesus. Yeah, there's an AI-generated picture of me as a saint going around. I showed it to my wife, and I was like, see, I'm a big deal. She was not impressed. Have you tried the Deepspace Ether 1960 kV motors? Asks Josh25. Thank you for €5, Josh. I have not. I tried a lot of motors and none even came close to their performance. I am skeptical. I would like to see a bench test showing that these motors perform different than other 1960 kV motors. Because most motors in the given size class are very, very similar to each other. Few motors have a radical difference in their performance. And, you just put them on a test stand, you run tests on them, and it turns out that they cluster pretty well. And then to a degree where I doubt that most people could tell the difference. Now, not nobody, but most people. So, like, you're flying 1960 kV motors. That's a pretty high kV. If most of the other motors you flew were 1800 or 1700 kV, then probably they're just higher kV and they feel really snappy and you like them. The bottom line is, I'm glad you found a motor you like and you're super happy with it. Maybe it's a good motor. Deepspace Ether. Let's look at it. Oh, yeah, 2207.3, 1960 kV. It's a motor. Like, the thing is, the design of these motors has refined itself to the point where they are almost all very, very similar to each other. There are some small differences, but generally, there's not radical differences. The main difference is the size of the motor and the kV. And then everything else, like, they all have magnets. They all have a pretty tight arc gap. They've all clustered around the same thing. So I would want to see, before I was like, wow, that motor really is different. I would want to see independent testing on a thrust stand to give us just a baseline of the performance of the motor. Chris Rosser does that kind of thing. And but I bet that this is going to perform, well, maybe it's not towards the middle of the pack. Maybe it's towards the top of the pack. But even the motors at the top of the pack are not that radically different from the motors in the middle of the pack that I think a pilot flying them would be like, oh, best motor ever. But if you're happy, placebo effect is real. That's my point. If you're happy, that's great. Joe B asks for config templates for a specific HD drone goggles controller transmitter for optimal freestyle performance available for purchase. Thank you for $5, Joe. No, there's not. I'm not selling config templates. I will for free teach you how to set up your drone. How about that? Because the minute I sell you a config template, there's going to be some little change you're going to need to make, and it's not going to be valid anymore. So I just don't want to do it. Total Warrior, good to see you again. 200 rupee super chat. The VTX, I can use maybe iflight Blitz 1.6 or axisflying smurf 1.6. Yes, you could do that. Those are both good. I don't know about the axisflying smurf. I mean, it probably is fine, but I haven't personally used it. I can also buy an 04 Lite. Well, I mean, do you want an analog setup or do you want a DJI setup? That's like a big fork in the road. Again, it's kind of weird that you're like, well, I could buy this analog VTX or that one, or I could get an 04 Lite. It's like you should decide whether you want DJI or analog first, and then pick an analog VTX. But both of those analog VTXs are fine. I wouldn't buy the 04 Lite. I would buy the 04 Pro if I could possibly swing it. The 04 Pro is much better than the 04 Lite. Has better field of view. It's much more durable. I would go for the 04 Pro if you were going that direction. Joseph Adorno, thank you for a $5 super chat. I have a 2.5-inch cinewhoop and it flies amazing. It oscillates when I fly through a hallway or any confined area. This is my real estate drone. Okay, so the issue is when you get into a confined area, the air coming off the props is like going like this, and it's bouncing off the wall, and it's rattling you around. The number one thing you can do is stay in the center of the hallway. The number two thing you can do is go to 2-inch props instead of 2.5-inch props because the smaller props will throw less air. But 2.5 inch is already pretty small. So it's kind of weird that it's doing that. Are you close to the ground? You also need to not be in ground effect. So if you're close to the ground or if you're moving over towards the wall, you'll get this oscillation. I would try to stay, at least, a couple feet off the ground. and in the center of the hallway, and hopefully that'll smooth it out. And then number 2 is you would use stabilization in post to fix it. But a 2.5 inch, I'm surprised. If you had a 3 inch or a 3.5 inch, I'd be like, yeah, that's too big for indoor flying. You need a smaller drone. 2.5 inch isn't that big. I'm surprised that that's happening to you. Gab and Overbeast point out that you can keep moving, fly faster, and slow it down in post. If you fly super slow, that can exacerbate the issue. If you're moving forward, then you're flying away from your own turbulence. But if you're moving slowly, you're getting hit by your own turbulence. What's the smallest, lightest drone? Asks J1. Thank you for $2. If you're talking about commercially available drones, it would be a 65mm whoop style drone. Probably is the smallest, lightest. They get down to about 16 grams. That's pretty small and light. There are smaller, lighter ones out there, but they're not commercially available. Bob Moreno asks, when I was getting into this hobby about a year ago, back up. J1, so like specifically the Beta FPV Air 65, what's HDZero's ultralight? The HDZero Mobilite? No. What's HDZero's ultralight? That's a specific brand. That you could actually go buy. Bob Moreno asks, when I was getting into this hobby about a year ago, I found your videos and I learned so much. Thank you. And thank you, Bob, for the $20 super chat. I appreciate your generosity. James Brooks, thank you for a $10 super chat. RC car and 04 VTX and gimbal. So you got an RC car with an 04, DJI 04 on it with a gimbal. How to monitor battery for the VTX to stop killing the battery? Can't. The 04 doesn't support external battery input. It only works with MSP. Connection to a flight controller. So a thing you could do, I don't know if I would do this, but a thing you could do is get a cheap flight controller, put it on the car, set up the on-screen display, and use that for battery voltage monitoring. It will work. I don't think that's a great idea. What I do on my RC car is I set up, I use an Express LRS receiver that has voltage monitoring, and I use the control link telemetry to monitor the battery voltage. The other thing is, like, I don't know about your car. Obviously, maybe your car doesn't do this. I don't have a ton of experience with RC cars. I have like 2 RC cars. Both of my RC cars, when the battery gets low, the ESC just goes into limp mode and stops working. The ESC won't let me kill the battery. And that has saved me a couple times when I've like given the controller to my kids and they've just gone hog wild on it. So, do your ESC do that? Maybe. Cjo, thank you for a $2 super chat. Cjo, I'm not interested in digging up old drama. It's all in the past, and I appreciate your $2 super chat, but I'm not going to rehash that. If somebody behaves badly in the past and apologizes for it, then they should be allowed to move on. And if somebody behaves badly in the past and it ain't got nothing to do with you, then you should just keep your damn nose to yourself and not stir up trouble. See what I mean? So, Scott Perry, thank you for a $5 super chat. INAV Wing 6 analog servos and 2 digital servos. Digital's twitch with head tracking. Yeah, because you have a noisy PWM signal and the analog servos don't respond to it, but the digital servos are precise enough to respond to it. Can ELRS 1.2 rate channels 9 plus affect it? How does INAV RC smoothing work? Can ELRS 1.2 rate channels
Half
9
rate.
plus? What?
The half rate channels when they do full.
Oh. No. Because that wouldn't cause jitter. I would say... Well, that wouldn't cause jitter. It would just cause slower updates. I don't think so. People were running servos off of ELRS half-rate aux channels. And it works. The precision is lower, but the update rate is still plenty. I mean,
Captain Bryce says half rate has no effect because servos run independent of the update rate.
oh, that's right. The output rate comes from the flight controller. You're not directly passing the PWM signal through from the receiver. The receiver's digital, for God's sake. So the refresh rate is controlled by INAV, and it just resends the same position if the RC command hasn't updated. Yeah, you're not driving those servos directly off the receiver anyway. So the answer is no. The ELRS half-rate channels don't affect it. Yeah, if you were driving the servos directly off the receiver, like with a PWM receiver, I think it would still, you would have 25 hertz update rate instead of 50, but that's still like, I don't think you would notice that. And I don't think it would cause jitter. So where's the jitter coming from? Good question. Again, RC smoothing wouldn't matter either because the issue is not the input signal. I think it's the output. There may be just noise in the output signal. But I'm not sure how you could low pass that. The real question, I think, would be, is the twitching digital servos because the signal is noisy or because the signal is actually jittering? That's the question. If it's a noisy signal, you're going to have to clean up the system, clean up the electrical noise. If the issue is that the signal is actually jittering, you got to figure out where that jitter is coming from. Chad Rains FPV helpfully points out that his 04 armor does support passing battery voltage through to the 04. That's pretty cool. So this is a utility. This is going back to the RC car question. This is a device that will kind of pretend to be a flight controller, but not really. And let the 04 think that a flight controller is talking to it and tell it it will tell it when you arm. So the 04 goes to full power. With the 04, you can just turn off low power mode and it'll stay at full power though. So that's not, with the 03, you actually needed this with the 03 to get the 03 to go to full power. The 04 will go to full power without this. But then the other thing Chad is telling us it does is it passes battery voltage through, so you get proper battery voltage in the OSD. Look at that smile. So wholesome. How do you see the American FPV market adapting? Thank you for a $2 super chat, Joe B. Joe, I'm going to try to keep this answer brief because obviously you could talk a lot, and it's all sort of guesswork. So I don't want to spend a lot of time doing guesswork when, what will happen will happen. I see a move, an increase in American manufacturing. I see more companies trying to manufacture in America. This is largely for the government military market, who is very concerned about domestic production and specifically concerned about reliance on China. I think that a lot of people see it as a strategic weakness that we are so reliant on China for our production and are trying to make moves to increase domestic manufacturing. Now, whether those moves are effective, like what the outcome of those moves is, and who is, like, there certainly is whenever you do something like this, like, who gets the contract? Oh, it's the best friend of the guy who donated to the senator who wrote the law. There's a lot of opportunity for this to be abused to certain people's benefit. And so, I'm not saying this is a purely altruistic, neutral process, but it is a process that is happening. We see Rotor Riot releasing made in the USA stuff. They're visible because they also sell to the hobby market, but there are companies who are developing drone related manufacturing in the United States who are not really selling to the hobby market. One that comes to mind is Neros. I don't know to what degree Neros manufactures in the U.S., but to some degree. They have an NDAA. They have an NDAA drone, so like they to a large degree. So this company is Neros. They make military drones, government drones. They manufacture in the U.S. Oh boy, isn't that fun? So how do you see the landscape changing? I see more American manufacturing. Onshore the manufacturing of drones critical to a modern arsenal. So onshoring is key to their business message. How will that affect the hobby market? I don't know, because the domestically manufactured stuff is usually more expensive and hobbyists are very price sensitive. But then we've got tariffs, sort of on again, off again tariffs. So there's also a move to try to move the American consumer market away from Chinese dependence, and it's unclear how that will play out. It's very unclear how that will play out. As far as hobbyists go, the regulatory situation right now is relatively toothless. There is very little enforcement of regulations around FPV, but hobbyists, people thinking about getting into the hobby, they start learning about the RC hobby, and they see all this. If you want to fly, you have to get a trust certificate. You have to register your drones. You have to yada yada yada. And they go, that puts a bad taste in my mouth. And some of them are just sort of like, nah, I'm gonna go do something else. Like some people just love the hobby and will get into it no matter what. Even though those regulations are relatively toothless, they just like, I don't like it. I'm gonna do something else. So I think that the regulations have certainly had a dampening effect. The increase in price of stuff has had a dampening effect for sure. The hobby market is still alive, but not as active and large as it once was, in my opinion. I don't have hard numbers to back that up, but that's my opinion. And then I think that it's likely that we will see more moves in the future to restrict the access to the airspace. I don't think they're done yet. Whether that's because someone in the government sees drones as a security threat and thinks they need to be removed from the airspace or further restricted, whether that's because a drone delivery or an air taxi company wants to clear the airspace. I think that the restrictions will get worse, and the ability to just buy a drone, build a drone, put it in the air with no sort of like care in the world, I think that is going to become more and more difficult. And that's unfortunate for people who love the hobby. There will always be people. There always were people who made it happen, and there always will be people who make it happen. But I think that the large thriving FPV community, I think that there's that famous Hunter Thompson quote that I think of a lot, actually. The famous Hunter Thompson quote where he says, well, I'll just put it on screen. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's kind of long. So now stop. He says, so now less than 5 years later, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west, and with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark, that place where the wave finally broke and rolled back. And I wonder if, as far as the FPV hobby goes, that wave has broke, and we can see the high water mark where the FPV community was as big as it ever will be, where the interest in FPV, the thriving community, and the FPV community is thriving. I/O just happened. There were a ton of people at I/O who had a great time. There's a ton of people in the FPV. I'm not saying it's not thriving now, but I do wonder whether the future that wave will roll back. and some people will stay up on the beach and not go with it. Yeah. So, got a little emotional there for a minute. Thank you, Chad Rains, for a $5 donation. That Hunter Thompson quote always gets me. Let's take a couple more questions. My dog Scooby asks, is Loctite a must when I use screws into metal? It's not a must. I often do builds without Loctite. I probably should use Loctite. You probably should use Loctite. You should also brush your teeth every night before you go to bed and every morning after you eat breakfast, but a lot of us don't. If the screws are tight, they will probably stay tight. If you check your screws regularly to see if they're loosening, you'll probably be okay. Loctite is good insurance though, and it would be a good idea to use it if you can, for sure. My hands are big. What radio should I buy? The Boxer is too small. There's not much that's bigger than the Boxer. I guess the TX16S. TX16S is one of the only ones that's much bigger than the Boxer. I guess that's the one for you. How do you tell if you need to get rid of a battery? I got a great video about that. There's not one simple answer. Excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. Come on. Well, okay. I can't find my video about battery is safe to use. That's weird. But here is a previous video on the Livestream Clips channel when someone asks, when should I retire a LiPo battery?
A LiPo question. Long. When to retire LiPo batteries? I have a dozen 4S and 6S over 18 months old.
Bardwell from the past answer.
If they fly okay and you're happy with the amount of voltage sag, then just keep flying them. Ultimately, the internal resistance will get to a point where there's excessive voltage sag. So if they're not physically damaged, what I look for is if they don't hold a charge. Like,
is there a noise gate on this? The way the noise gate drops out during silence is driving me crazy.
If I charge them up or put them at storage, and then I come back and they've sunk down an excessive amount, then I'm like, okay, time to retire these. If the internal resistance gets too high, like if I've got like a 1,000 to 1,300 milliamp hour pack, and the internal resistance is in like the 15 to 20 to maybe 25 range, that's too high. It's going to perform badly. I probably would get rid of it, but I might still use it as like a goggle battery. You know, ultimately the battery performance and the flight time is what's going to tell.
How can I not find this video? I can't believe I'm usually really good at remembering the keywords that let me search for the video. I have to wonder if Google is letting me down by not showing me my own video somehow. How far back do I have to go? Oh, well, not that far. Blunty, there's the video where I talk about disposing of a battery. When to dispose of a battery. I thought the keyword was safe to charge. But I'm just getting this video. I can't believe. There it is. Why the frick? Why is this on the second page? What the hell, Google? Joshua Bardwell, safe to charge. Is your LiPo safe to charge? Why would that not be on the front page? I'm mad at you, Google. Let's go do an incognito window. Maybe it's because this video is coming up so strong. What the frick? And then a bunch of live stream clips content. This is the video you want. Is your LiPo safe to charge? Oh my God, don't show me a commercial. Is your LiPo safe to charge? When to throw it out? That's the one you want. That goes into more detail of when to dispose of a battery. Oh my God, we have like 30 questions queued. Obviously, in the next 7 minutes, we won't get to all 30 of them. If you need answer to a question, you can always email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. Empyrean Blade says, is it possible to change analog VTX output power mid-flight using a switcher button? Yes, it is. What you want is the VTX command. Yes, this is the video.
I got a video for the analog pilots today. Yep.
This is the video you want. Betaflight change VTX band channel power on a switch? Yes! This video shows how to use the Betaflight VTX command, which will let you link an aux channel to your VTX settings. You can change channel and power by pressing a switch or a button. Okay? That is what you want, and that's how you do it. That's the video for you. Charco says, my DJI O4 Air unit died when I was copying files from it into my computer. Apparently, it's well known that you should use a fan when working on the drone. Is that so? Yeah, the O4 Air unit overheats extremely quickly on the bench. If you're flashing, I would always have a fan on it for sure. Actually, the O3 you could flash without plugging in battery. I don't think the O4 is like that.
We went back and forth a bunch in chat. They only had USB plugged in.
Oh, then it shouldn't.
I'm very confused by this.
It didn't overheat then.
They've been through multiple, cables. I don't know. It's very confusing, but they said DJI support is going to replace it. So.
Oh well, good for you. Yeah, good for you. No, if you're only plugged into USB, then the RF amps were not turned on, and it should not overheat. Can I map my throttle control to my twist knob on my Boxer for my cinewhoop? Yes. Yes. And guess what? My live streams are going to degenerate into just me linking to my own videos. Betaflight OpenDX.
I'm Joshua Bardwell.
Throttle scaling. Tame your 2S cinewhoop. This shows how to. I'm pretty sure I do it on a knob. Is this on a knob? No. No. Hang on. This is not the one. There's a second video. Yeah, here's the one you want. OpenTX Tyrannus throttle limit on side slider. Now, for this one, I use a side slider, but you could easily just do the same thing with a knob. Okay? OpenTX Tyrannus throttle limit on side slider. You will have to translate from this to your modern radio screen, but it's just the mixer. It's just the mixer screen. It's just a slightly different layout. That's what you want. That means you can turn from like 75% to 100% just by turning the knob. It's pretty cool for flying whoops, because oftentimes you want to like lower that throttle or raise it up again. Is the Beta FPV Light Radio 3 viable for beginners? I don't recommend using the Beta FPV Light Radio. The Light Radio 3 at least runs HDZero and has a screen. No. Don't use this. Stay away from this. This thing is a piece of junk. Stay away from it. The Light Radio has had QC issues in the past, failing gimbals. It doesn't have a screen. It's kind of, you have to use Beta FPV configurator to do basic configuration. It's just not. Just stay away from it. I wouldn't buy it. It's freaking $32. Okay. I mean, for $32, maybe for somebody it's the right thing to get. But it's kind of a pain in the butt. For $60, you should just buy the Radio Master Pocket. For sure. Let's see here. Oof, we got a lot of questions. I'm so sorry we didn't get to all of them. How does motor KV relate to the switching frequency from the ESC? In almost no way does it relate. I will say that for very small motors, like 0702, 0802 motors, like on 65 millimeter and 75 millimeter whoops, for very small motors, you get an increase in flight time by going to a high PWM frequency on the ESC. So that's a good idea. But I don't know that relates to the motor KV. It's just the small motor, and the FETs do better with a higher. I don't know why. I don't remember. So I don't think there's. I don't think there's a relationship there. Is HDZero suitable for bandos? Not really. HDZero does not excel at penetration, and it does not excel in high multipath environments. Bandos are both of those things. HDZero, I'm not saying no one ever has flown HDZero in a bando. I'm not saying no one could, but I am saying that is not where it excels, and it is definitely not. I would not say that it is suitable for bandos. I would say it is less than suitable, but you could make it work if you needed to. Let's see here. What would you recommend for beginners on a budget who want to go digital? I wouldn't. All of the digital systems are just about equally as more expensive than analog systems. You can sometimes get cheap digital goggles, but then the video transmitters are 2 to 3 times as expensive as analog. So depending on how many drones you build, you break even quickly. I think the cheapest option is still analog. And the digital systems. There isn't a digital system that's notably cheaper than any others. Oh my God, it's just now 10 p.m. So I'm going to plug Aaron Ciotti's stream. Ciotti's going to stream 4th of July giveaways and Q&A. He's going to start streaming. And I'm going to just, you know it. The stream is officially over because it's 10. But you know I got to get in. You know I got to get a little getting over it. So we're going to play getting over it for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
Also,
and then
just so you guys know, we won't be back next week, but we'll be back the week after that as long as nothing changes.
Okay.
I know people always ask me, like,
when are you streaming
when's
next?
the stream?
Yeah. Okay, so here we are just before the slide. We're going to do the slide skip, hopefully. I've gotten pretty good at the slide skip. Now that I'm on stream, it will take me a few tries, right? I'm not warmed up. I need the hammer to be a little bit to the left. That's a little too far to the left, but we'll give it a go. No! That didn't work well. Got to move my keyboard out of the way. Ugh, I feel off today. The slide skip is where you jump up from here up to that stairwell, the stairs, to skip the slide that is over to the left. Oh, that was a really bad one. I don't know what my problem is today. I feel a little off. I don't know if my mouse is... That was not it. That was not it. You got to get a little whip. You got to get a little whip on those arms. No. Well, okay. So the question will be, can I finish the slide skip in under 10 minutes? Wow. Plenty, tell me when it's like 10 after.
Okay. 10-4.
Oh, that was so close. That was almost it.
We want to try to answer some more questions?
You know, I got a comment today. I don't know how much stake I should put in it. That said, basically, like, if you want to play games on stream, fine, but, like, trying to answer questions and shout at the game is a little, like, distracting. And he was like, maybe you should just do one or the other. I don't know. What do you think, Blunty?
Well, it is a little distracting when I'm talking or
I'm
trying
shouting.
to answer a question, and you're going, ah!
I mean, you got to do what you got to do. I agree that is a little distracting. The stream is officially over. I guess, I mean, I'm of the opinion that, like, you should answer questions as long as you're on stream. I don't know why I can't freaking, there we go. There it was. Okay, good. I'm of the opinion that if I'm here, I'm working, I'm answering questions. Well, you got a question? You want to answer questions? I'll try not to scream. I'll try and be quiet. I could mute my mic. No, I can't answer questions if I mute my mic.
What's the deal? Jake, Grabber says, "What's the deal with 6-inch, 5-inch? What's the deal?
What's the deal?
6-inch, 5-inch, 6S 5-inch motor kV going up and up. Seems like it started out at 1750 kV, and now there are motors with 2160 kV."
Okay, so here's the deal. Go back to the beginning of the stream. kV times battery voltage equals RPM. So, but there's another factor there, which is that when you go to a higher voltage, for reasons which I won't get into right now, and I'm not sure I could fully explain, when you go to a higher voltage, you can run the motor at a higher RPM without overheating it and without overworking it. Oh, freaking heck. So originally, you take a given prop RPM at 4S, and you go to 6S. You son of a beast. Get up there. You go to 6S, and the equivalent kV is about 1750 kV. And you have the same RPM that you did on a 4S battery. But then people are like, I want more power. I want more. And so they started increasing the kV, and nothing bad happened. And they were like, oh. And that's the advantage of the higher voltage, is that you can push the RPM up, and the motor can just take it. And so 2100 kV is a lot, for sure. You get up there. Oh no. 2100 kV is a lot, but like 1800 or 1900 kV isn't really that bad, and you have much higher RPM than you did on 4S. And you just get away with it. And the same thing happens with 8S. You go from 6S to 8S, and suddenly you can push the motor even further until you hit the RPM limit of the prop. You hit the speed of sound. That was pretty good. And then the prop can't spin any faster, but we're not really near that. The motor is the limiting factor. So that's, and right now, really, it's more that the battery is the limiting factor. Like on 2100 kV, it's really easy to just be ravaging your battery. And you don't really want that high of a kV, but the motor can take it if you're on the higher voltage. So that's the answer. People wanted more power. 4S didn't get them there. They went to 6S, and suddenly they could go higher kV, and the motor didn't like die, and your performance wasn't bad. And so they were like, great. And it's mostly racers who are going to the, oh, come on. Oh, you piece of shit. It's mostly racers who are doing it. They're going to the higher kV because like freestyle pilots generally care more about flight time and not killing their battery. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, no! Okay. Well, back here again.
Super Deluxe asks, someone wants to hire me to fly my drone indoors. I don't have a business or a 107. Can I just do it for free and not break any laws, or can they pay me in product or cash legally?
You can do it.
You can do whatever you want.
You're indoors. No one cares.
You can fly over people. You can fly through somebody's legs. You could fly over a car indoors if there was a car in a garage. It's all these things you can do because you're indoors.
All the FAA, and the FAA has no control over indoors. They only control the airspace. Make your bag. Get your bag. Oh, freaking heck. I'm really off my game today. I don't know. Didn't even have an adult beverage with my stream. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, FPV with Devo, who earlier talked about XT30 issues with his 850 milliamp hour, says, "Do I really need an XT60?"
Yes. Unless, how many amps is the XT30 rated? Two problems. Number one, the XT30 is rated for 30 amps. You are probably pulling more than 30 amps. You're going to melt the thing. But number two, the batteries that come with an XT30 on them are little batteries for little drones. You don't have a little battery. You don't have a little drone. And you have big honkin' motors pulling ridiculous kV. You need an XT60, both to handle the current that your motors are pulling, and because the battery you need to be able to feed your motors is going to be a larger battery that isn't going to come with an XT30. So, in other words, if you buy a battery that comes with an XT30 on it and then you just swap it for an XT60, that's still not going to work. I mean, that'll be better, but it's still not going to work because the battery itself, they're they're a package. Get out of there. They're a package. The manufacturer makes the battery, and they put the connector on the battery that is suitable for the battery. Okay. Orange jump. This time I will not screw it up. I've gotten pretty good at the orange jump. He said, almost screwing it up. Come on, get up there. There we go. That's good. I'm trying not to slow roll the orange jump, but to get better at actually like jumping through it instead of just crawling up it. Because eventually you have to get fast at this section. I can do this section slowly, pretty consistently.
Here's a good question. Do you recommend the GoPro Hero 11 Mini?
I liked my Hero 11 Mini. No, grab on. No. Come here. Get up there. I liked my Hero 11 Mini a lot. There were some issues with it, like locking up, in not powering on, and I had to like do the double button push sometimes and to bring it back to life. But I thought for such a small package and a reasonably durable package, I thought it was a good GoPro. The main downside, shut the hell up. Get up there. The main downside was that it has a built-in battery, so you can't change the battery if you run the battery out. And also like with my Hero, 7, 8, 9, whatever, I would just have batteries on a charger. And then when I wanted to fly, I would just pull a battery off the charger and put it in the camera. But with the 11, if it wasn't already charged up when I was ready to go, then I was kind of screwed. Because the 11, you would just plug it into USB and then in an hour you could go fly. Come on, buddy. Oh, why today? Why today?
Right. It is
all days.
10 after.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'm going to send it. Whoop. Get up there. Can I jump? Can I pogo this? No. Come on. Get up there. Alrighty. Good night, everybody. It's been lovely. I'll do the traditional sending myself back to the bottom. Boink. Boink. No, get off. Bye. Wee. Okay. Now we'll go this way. Wee. And not quite. All the way at the bottom. All the way. Go. Oh my God. I'm not good at going down. Boink. Good night, everybody. Oh, stop stream.